I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who tells a story online like this. But I guess when everything you thought was solid turns out to be built on something rotten, you start looking for a place to unload it. I'm not doing this for sympathy. I'm doing it because I still hear the sounds in my head at night, and I need to put them somewhere outside of me. My name's Eric. I'm 36, born and raised in a suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. I've got a decent job managing logistics for a regional shipping company. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. For most of my adult life, I thought I had things figured out. Stable career, a house with a 2-car garage, and a wife I genuinely believed I'd grow old with. Her name's Lindsay. We met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's 4th of July party. She had this way of laughing like she didn't care who heard her, like she owned the space she was in. That kind of confidence pulled me in immediately. She worked in marketing, sharp, quick-witted, always just a little bit unpredictable. The kind of woman who texts you at 2 a.m. saying, "Let's drive to the lake," and somehow convince you it was a good idea. We got married 3 years after we met. No kids, by choice, at least that's what we told everyone. We said we wanted to focus on us. Looking back now, I don't know if that was ever really true for her. Our house sat in one of those quiet neighborhoods where nothing really happens. Tree-lined streets, people walking their dogs at the same time every evening, the occasional backyard barbecue where everyone pretends they like each other more than they actually do. It was comfortable, predictable, safe. Or at least I thought it was. The couple next door moved in about a year ago. His name was Ryan. Early 40s, worked in construction management, always had a project going on in his garage. The kind of guy who's friendly without trying too hard. We hit it off almost immediately. Talked about football, tools, normal guy stuff. His wife Michelle traveled a lot for work, some consulting job that had her flying out every other week. Lindsay took to Ryan pretty quickly too, which at the time I thought was just her being her usual outgoing self. She'd chat with him over the fence, sometimes linger a little longer than I expected, but I never gave it much thought. Why would I? Trust isn't something you question when it feels normal. There were little things though, things I brushed off. Like how she started dressing a little nicer on random weekdays. Not like full-on going-out outfits, but more effort than usual for just being at home. Or how she'd suddenly be more interested in yard work when she knew Ryan was outside. She'd time it perfectly, step out with a glass of iced tea just as he fired up whatever saw or drill he was using. I remember one afternoon I came home early from work, and I saw them standing closer than I expected near the side of the house. Not touching, nothing obvious, but there was this energy. Something that made me pause for a second before I walked up. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. They both turned at the same time, just a little too quickly. Lindsay smiled. "Oh, you're home early." "Yeah, slow day." Ryan nodded. "We were just talking about maybe redoing the fence line. Yours is leaning a bit." I looked at the fence. It was fine. Not perfect, but not something you'd just randomly be discussing like that. "Yeah," I said slowly. "We'll take a look at it." That was it. Small moment. Easy to forget. Except I didn't forget it. Things shifted after that, but not in a way I could clearly point to. It was more like a feeling that something was slightly off. Lindsay was still affectionate, still told me she loved me, still curled up next to me on the couch at night. But there were gaps. Moments where she seemed distant, like she was somewhere else in her head. Her phone became more private too. Not in a dramatic way, she didn't suddenly lock it down or anything, but she'd angle it away from me when she texted. If I walked into the room, she'd sometimes put it face down a little quicker than necessary. Again, nothing concrete, just enough to make your gut start whispering. I didn't want to be that paranoid husband. I told myself I was overthinking it. Lindsay had never given me a real reason to doubt her before. We had our arguments like any couple, but nothing that screamed betrayal. Then there was Ryan. He started dropping by more often. At first it made sense, borrowing tools, asking about the fence, offering to help fix a loose gutter. But then it became casual visits. He'd knock on the door while I was at work, according to Lindsay, just to check something or see if we needed help with anything. I remember asking her once, "Doesn't it seem like he's over here a lot?" She shrugged like it was nothing. "He's just friendly, Eric. You guys get along." "Yeah, but you're the one home most of the time." "So? You want me to be rude to the neighbors now?" That shut me up. I didn't want to sound controlling or insecure. That's how guys lose trust fast, and I prided myself on not being that guy. Still, the feeling stayed. One night, about 3 months ago, we were sitting on the couch watching some Netflix show neither of us really cared about. Lindsay had her legs tucked under her, leaning into me, her head on my shoulder. It felt normal, comfortable, like everything was exactly how it should be. Then her phone buzzed.
She picked it up, glanced at it, and for just a split second, her body stiffened. It was subtle, but I felt it. "Who is it?" I asked. "Just a spam thing," she said quickly, already putting the phone down. I didn't push. I should have, but I didn't. That's the thing about trust. You don't realize how much you rely on it until it's the very thing that blinds you. The night everything started to unravel was a Thursday. I remember that specifically because Thursdays were usually my late nights at work. End-of-week reports, coordinating shipments for Friday, making sure everything lined up. I normally wouldn't get home until close to 9. But that day, everything wrapped up early. Systems were down for part of the afternoon, which meant there wasn't much I could do. By 6:30, my boss told us to just head out. I didn't text Lindsay right away. I figured I'd surprise her. Maybe pick up takeout on the way home, make it a relaxed night. I stopped at a place we both liked, grabbed her favorite, chicken Alfredo, extra sauce, and a couple of beers. I remember feeling good, normal, like I was doing something small but thoughtful. The sun was just starting to set when I pulled into our driveway. The neighborhood was quiet, like always. Nothing unusual. Ryan's truck was parked in his driveway, which wasn't strange either. He was usually home around that time if he wasn't working late. I grabbed the food, balanced the drinks in my other hand, and walked up to the front door. That's when I noticed it was unlocked. Not wide open, just unlocked. Lindsay was usually pretty good about locking the door, especially when she was home alone. I pushed it open slowly. "Hey, I'm home," I called out. No answer. I stepped inside, setting the food on the kitchen counter. The house felt off, quiet in a way that didn't feel right. Like when you walk into a place and immediately know something's different, even if you can't explain why. Then I heard it.
A faint sound coming from down the hallway, from our bedroom. At first, I thought maybe the TV was on, but it wasn't that. It was movement. Soft, rhythmic, barely audible unless you were really listening. I stood there for a second, trying to make sense of it. "Lindsay?" I called out again, a little louder this time. The sound stopped. Completely. That's when something cold settled in my chest. I don't know what made me walk down that hallway instead of turning around and leaving. Maybe some part of me already knew, and I needed to see it to believe it. Each step felt heavier than the last. My heartbeat was loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. When I reached the bedroom door, it was slightly ajar, just enough to see a sliver of the room, just enough to hear the whisper. A man's voice. Low, close. Not mine. I froze. For a second, just one, I told myself it couldn't be what I thought it was, that there had to be some other explanation, something logical, something harmless. Then Lindsay laughed. Soft, breathless, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. I pushed the door open, and everything I thought I knew about my life shattered in an instant. The door didn't swing open dramatically. There was no loud bang, no warning. It just eased inward under my hand like it had 100 times before, except this time it felt like I was stepping into someone else's life. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was looking at. Lindsay was in our bed, not under the covers like she was resting, not sitting up scrolling through her phone. She was tangled in the sheets, bare shoulders exposed, her hair messy like she'd been running her hands through it. And next to her, too close, way too close, was Ryan, my neighbor, my friend. He was shirtless, sitting halfway up like he just turned when he heard the door. His expression went from relaxed to frozen in a fraction of a second, like a guy caught in headlights, except there was nowhere for him to go. Nobody said anything. I just stood there, still holding my keys, still trying to catch up to what my eyes were already screaming at me. It felt like time stretched out, like everything slowed down just enough for every detail to burn into my memory. The sheets twisted around their legs, Lindsay's hand still resting on his chest. The way her eyes widened, not just in surprise but in something deeper. Panic, guilt, fear. "Eric," she started, her voice cracking immediately. I don't even remember dropping my keys, but I must have because I heard them hit the floor somewhere behind me. "What the hell is this?" My voice didn't sound like mine. It came out low, tight, like it was being forced through clenched teeth. Ryan was the first one to move. He swung his legs off the bed, grabbing for his shirt on the floor. "Man, listen," he said. "Don't," I snapped, taking a step forward. "Don't say a word." He froze again, shirt halfway in his hands. I looked at Lindsay, really looked at her. I was waiting for something, some kind of explanation that could rewind everything I was seeing. Something that would make it not real. But there wasn't anything. There was just her, sitting there, in our bed,
wrapped in our sheets, looking at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. "How long?" I asked. It came out quieter than I expected, almost calm. But underneath it, there was something building, something dangerous. She shook her head immediately. "Eric, please, it's not." "How long?" I repeated, louder this time. Ryan tried again. "It's not what you think." I turned on him so fast he actually took a step back. "Get out." 2 words. Flat. Final. He hesitated, just for a second, like he was trying to decide if he should argue, defend himself, do something. But whatever he saw in my face must have made the decision for him. He pulled his shirt on quickly, grabbed his boots, didn't even bother tying them. He avoided looking at me as he moved toward the door, like eye contact would make it worse. When he passed me, I could smell it. Sweat. Her perfume. Something else mixed together that made my stomach turn. He muttered, "I'm sorry," under his breath. I didn't respond. I just stood there until I heard the front door open, then close. And then it was just me and Lindsay. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. Like the walls themselves were pressing in. She pulled the sheet tighter around herself like that was going to fix anything. Like covering up now mattered. "Eric," she said again. Softer this time. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Don't say my name like that." Tears were already forming in her eyes. I noticed that. I hated that I noticed it. "It didn't mean anything," she said quickly. It just happened." I stared at her, trying to understand how those words could come out of her mouth in this moment. "It just happened," I repeated. "You don't just end up in bed with the neighbor by accident, Lindsay." She shook her head, tears starting to fall now. It wasn't supposed to go this far. There it was. That sentence hit harder than anything else so far. So there was a this far? I asked. She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than anything she could have said. "How long?" I asked again, slower this time, each word deliberate. She swallowed, looking down at her hands gripping the sheet. "A few weeks." I felt something twist inside my chest. That's not the truth. She looked up at me, and I could see it. The hesitation. The calculation. "Lindsay." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "A couple months." I actually staggered back a step. It felt physical, like I'd been hit. "A couple months," I repeated. "You've been sleeping with him for a couple months?" "We weren't." She started. "Don't." I cut in sharply. "Do not try to rephrase that." She broke then, fully crying, shoulders shaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Eric. We were just talking at first. And then, I don't know. It just what?" I demanded. "It just turned into you sneaking around with him while I was at work. While I'm in the next house over having beers with him like an idiot." Her face crumbled. I felt lonely. That stopped me cold. "Lonely," I said, almost incredulous. "You felt lonely? You're always working," she said, her voice rising just enough to push back. "You never really here. Even when you are. You come home. You're tired. You sit on the couch. You barely talk to me anymore. So you sleep with the guy next door." I shot back. "That's the solution. I didn't plan it," she cried. "It just felt easy with him. He listened. He noticed me." I let out another bitter laugh. "Yeah, I bet he did." There was a moment when neither of us spoke. Just the sound of her crying, and my own breathing, sharp and uneven. I looked around the room then. Our room. The dresser we picked out together. The pictures on the wall from trips we'd taken. The life we built. All sitting there like it still meant something. And right in the middle of it was this. "How many times?" I asked. She hesitated again. "How many times, Lindsay?" "A few," she said weakly. "Give me a number." "I don't know." "Give me a number." I snapped. She flinched. 5. Maybe 6. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady myself. 5 or 6 times.
In my house. In my bed. While I was at work. I asked. She nodded slowly. While I was next door.
I added, my voice dropping again. That one took longer, but eventually she nodded again. That was the moment something in me shifted completely. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the proximity, the audacity. The fact that I was right there, sometimes literally feet away, completely unaware. I walked over to the nightstand, staring down at it without really seeing it. You know what's crazy? I said quietly. She didn't answer. I trusted both of you. Completely. I shook my head slightly. I defended you when something felt off. I told myself I was being paranoid. Eric, please, she whispered. No, I said, turning back to her. You don't get to please me right now. She wiped at her face, trying to pull herself together. We can fix this. That made me laugh again, louder this time. Fix this? I repeated. How exactly do you fix this, Lindsay? Walk me through it. She didn't have an answer. I made a mistake, she said instead. A huge mistake, but it doesn't have to end everything. I stared at her for a long moment, searching for something, anything, that felt real. All I saw was someone I didn't recognize. Get dressed, I said finally. She blinked. What? Get dressed, I repeated. I don't want to look at you like this. She hesitated, then slowly started gathering her clothes from the floor, keeping the sheet wrapped around herself as she moved. I turned away, walking out of the bedroom and into the living room. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up. I could still hear her moving around in the other room. The same room where, minutes ago, she was with him. I sat down on the couch, staring straight ahead, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Because the truth was, I didn't have a plan. All I had was the image burned into my head, replaying over and over again, and the realization that my life, as I knew it, was already over. I sat there on the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor like it might give me answers if I focused hard enough. It didn't. All I could see was the pattern in the rug we picked out together 2 years ago, back when decisions like that felt important in a normal way. Now, it just felt like a reminder of how everything had been built on something I clearly didn't understand. I could hear Lindsay moving around in the bedroom, drawers opening, closet doors sliding, the quiet rustling of clothes. Every sound felt amplified, like my brain had nowhere else to go except into overdrive. I kept replaying it. The door opening, his voice, her laugh, that laugh. It was the same one from that 4th of July party when I first met her. The same one that made me feel like I'd found someone different. Except now it didn't feel warm or exciting. It felt like something I was never supposed to hear directed at someone else. Footsteps approached slowly from the hallway. I didn't look up right away. I wasn't ready to see her again. Not yet. Eric, she said quietly. I leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly before finally lifting my eyes. She was dressed now. Jeans, one of those oversized sweaters she wore when she wanted to feel comfortable. Her hair was pulled back in a messy way that would have looked normal any other day. Now, everything about her just looked wrong. Like I was looking at someone pretending to be my wife. What? I said flatly. She stayed standing for a moment, like she didn't know if she was allowed to come closer. That hesitation alone said a lot. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Yeah, I said. That makes 2 of us. Another silence settled between us, but this one was different. Less explosive. More hollow. I never wanted to hurt you, she said after a few seconds. I let out a slow breath through my nose.
You keep saying things like that like they matter right now. They do matter, she insisted, taking a small step closer. You're my husband. I looked at her, really looked at her again, and something in me hardened even more. Then why wasn't I enough? That question slipped out before I could stop it. It wasn't even angry. It was honest, and I hated that. She froze. I was enough to build a life with, I continued, my voice steady but tight. Enough to pay the mortgage, enough to show up every day, enough to trust you without questioning everything you did. Eric, but I wasn't enough to stay faithful to. I cut in. I wasn't enough to stop you from crossing that line? Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't cry right away. She just stood there, absorbing it. It wasn't about you not being enough, she said softly. That's exactly what it's about. I shot back. No. She shook her head, more firmly now. It wasn't. I messed up. I made choices I shouldn't have made, but it wasn't because you weren't enough. Then explain it. I gestured vaguely between us. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. She hesitated again, and I could see the struggle in her face, like she was trying to find words that wouldn't make things worse, even though that ship had already sailed. I felt invisible, she finally said. I frowned slightly. Invisible. With you, she added quickly. Not at first, but over time, yeah. I leaned back again, processing that. So you're saying this is my fault? I didn't say that, she replied, a little sharper. It sure sounds like it. I'm trying to explain how I felt, she said, her voice rising just enough to show frustration. Not blame you for what I did. I shook my head. You don't get to rewrite this into something balanced, Lindsay. This isn't we both made mistakes. This is you sleeping with the guy next door. She flinched at that, like the bluntness of it hit harder than anything else so far. I know what I did, she said quieter now. I'm not denying it. Then stop trying to soften it. That landed. She didn't respond right away. I stood up then, suddenly unable to sit still anymore. The energy in my chest had nowhere to go. I started pacing slowly across the living room, running a hand through my hair. Did you ever think about me? I asked, not even looking at her. At any point during any of this? Yes, she said immediately. I stopped and turned. When? After, she admitted. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. After. I felt guilty every time, she added quickly. I hated myself for it. But you kept doing it, I said. She didn't have an answer for that. That silence again. Always the silence. I walked over to the front window, glancing out without really focusing on anything. Ryan's house was right there. Same as always. Same driveway. Same stupid garage he was always working out of. Except now every memory attached to it felt contaminated. All those times he came over, I said slowly. All those conversations. Beers. Helping him with stuff. That was all happening at the same time. She didn't answer out loud, but I saw it in her face. Yes, I said for her, nodding slightly. Of course it was. I turned away from the window, the frustration building again. You had me shaking his hand, I continued, talking to him like he was just some neighbor. Meanwhile, you two are... I stopped myself, exhaling sharply. I don't even have a word for it. I know how it looks, she said. I stared at her. How it looks. I mean, how it is, she corrected quickly. I know. Another pause.
Then, quieter, almost, hesitant, she said, Do you want to know how it started? I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to hear it, didn't want more details burned into my brain. But another part, the part that needed to understand, needed to make sense of how this even became real, pushed forward. Yeah, I said finally. I do. She took a breath, like she was bracing herself. It was just talking at first, she said. Over the fence, in the yard. You know that. I nodded slightly, arms crossed now. He'd come over sometimes when you were at work. Just quick stuff, borrowing tools, asking about the house, normal things. Yeah, I said, normal. At some point, it just shifted, she continued. We started talking longer, about more personal stuff. Like what? His marriage, she said. Michelle being gone all the time. Him feeling like they were just existing, not really together. I let out a quiet scoff. Convenient. She ignored that. And then he asked about us, she went on. About you. About how things were. And you told him what? I asked. That we were fine, she said quickly. I raised an eyebrow. At first, she added, more honestly. But then, I don't know, I started talking more about how things felt routine, how we didn't really connect the same way anymore. I shook my head slowly. So you vent to the guy next door about your marriage. Great start. I wasn't thinking of it like that, she said. That's the problem, I replied. She exhaled shakily. One day he came over when I was inside. We were just talking in the kitchen. It got more personal, closer. I felt my jaw tighten. And then he kissed me, she said quietly. There it was. And you didn't stop it, I said. She shook her head, tears forming again. I should have. But you didn't. No. I looked away for a second, swallowing the surge of anger. And after that, I asked. She wiped at her face. After that, it just kept going. We'd text, find excuses to see each other. And then one day, it crossed the line. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. And today, I said, this wasn't the first time in this house, was it? She hesitated. That's what I thought, I muttered. Another silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Finally, I spoke again, quieted out. Do you love him? Her head snapped up. No. Too fast. Don't lie to me again, I said. I'm not, she insisted. I don't love him. Then what is it? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, searching. I don't know, she admitted. It felt exciting, different, like I wasn't stuck in the same routine. I nodded slowly. So I'm the routine. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, I cut in. She stepped closer then, desperation creeping in. I still love you. That hasn't changed. I looked at her for a long moment, letting that sit. Then I shook my head slightly. I don't even know what that means anymore. And for the first time since I walked through that bedroom door, I realized something that scared me almost as much as everything else. I wasn't just angry. I was starting to feel detached. Like whatever we had, whatever connection I thought was unbreakable, was already slipping through my fingers. And I didn't know if I even wanted to hold on to it anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I tried, at one point. Around 2 a.m, I laid down on the couch, stared at the ceiling, closed my eyes and told myself to just shut everything off. Just for a few hours. But every time I got close to drifting, it hit me again. The image, the sounds, the realization. And my body would jolt right back awake like it refused to let me escape it. Lindsay stayed in the bedroom. I could hear her moving around earlier in the night. Then nothing. I don't know if she slept. I didn't ask. At that point, we were just 2 people in the same house, separated by a hallway that felt longer than it actually was. Around 5:30, the sky outside started to lighten. That gray, early morning kind of light that makes everything look dull and exposed. I got up, walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water I didn't really want. That's when I saw it. The takeout I'd brought home the night before, still sitting on the counter, untouched. The bag crumpled slightly where I dropped it. The containers inside probably cold and soggy by now. For some reason, that hit me harder than I expected. I'd been thinking about her. On my way home, I'd been thinking about making her smile, about doing something small that mattered. And while I was doing that,
She was already there, with him, in our bed. I let out a long breath and ran a hand over my face. That was it. Something clicked into place right then. Not in an explosive way. Not with anger or shouting. Just a quiet, steady kind of clarity. I couldn't stay in this. Not like this. I walked back into the living room, grabbed my phone, and sat down on the couch. For a few minutes I just stared at the screen. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled. There was a name I hadn't expected to land on. Michelle, Ryan's wife. My thumb hovered over it. We weren't close, just friendly neighbors. Occasional small talk, a few shared drinks when she was actually in town. But she deserved to know, the same way I would have wanted to know. I stared at her number for a long time, weighing it. Part of me didn't want to drag someone else into this mess. Another part of me, the part that kept replaying Ryan's face in my bedroom, felt like staying quiet would make me complicit in something I didn't ask for. I hit call. It rang 3 times before she picked up, her voice groggy. Hello? Hey Michelle. It's Eric. A pause. Eric. Everything okay? I almost laughed at that. No. I said honestly. Not really. That got her attention. What's going on? I didn't ease into it. I didn't soften it. I came home early last night. I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. Lindsay and Ryan were in my bed. Silence. Not a short one. Not confusion. Just silence. Then, quietly, you're serious? Yeah. Another pause. I could almost hear her processing it on the other end. How long? She asked. Couple months apparently. She exhaled sharply, like the air got knocked out of her. I knew something felt off. That caught me slightly off guard. You did. Ryan's been different, she said. Distant. On his phone more. I asked him about it and he brushed it off. Of course he did. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it. Don't be, she replied, her voice tightening. Another silence. But this one felt different. Shared. In a way. What are you going to do? She asked. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling again. I don't know yet, but I'm not staying like this. Yeah, she said quietly. I get that. We didn't talk much longer after that. There wasn't much else to say. Just a quick exchange of, I don't even know what to call it. Understanding. Maybe. Then we hung up. I set my phone down and sat there for a few more minutes. Then I stood up. The decision had already been made. I just needed to act on it. I walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. The same hallway that felt like a tunnel the night before. This time, it felt empty. I knocked once, more out of habit than anything. Come in. Lindsay's voice came from the other side, soft and tired. I opened the door.
She was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, like she'd been waiting. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept either. For a second, we just looked at each other. I talked to Michelle, I said. Her expression shifted immediately. Not surprise, more like dread finally becoming real. You told her? She asked. Yeah. She looked down, nodding slightly. Okay. No argument, no pushback, just acceptance. That said a lot. I'm leaving, I said. Her head snapped back up. Leaving? For now, I clarified. I need space. I can't stay here with you right now. She stood up quickly. Eric, wait, please don't just walk out like this. I held up a hand slightly. I'm not disappearing. I'm just stepping away. We can work through this, she said, desperation creeping back into her voice. We can go to counseling, we can... Lindsay, I cut in, calm but firm. Stop. She fell quiet. I'm not making any long-term decisions today, I continued. I'm not saying what happens next in the big picture. But right now, I need distance. Tears started falling again. Silently this time. I don't want to lose you. she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her one more time. The woman I married was still there, somewhere. I could see pieces of her in the way she looked at me, in the way her voice cracked. But layered over that was everything else. The choices she made, the lies, the betrayal. I already feel lost, I said quietly. That hit her. I saw it. I love you, she said, almost like a reflex. I paused. Those words used to mean something solid, something safe. Now they just felt complicated. I don't know what that means anymore, I replied. I turned and walked over to the closet, grabbing a duffel bag from the top shelf. I packed quickly. Just essentials. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, some toiletries. Nothing sentimental. Nothing that would make me hesitate. She didn't try to stop me again. She just stood there, watching, crying quietly. When I zipped the bag up, the sound felt louder than it should have. I slung it over my shoulder and headed for the door. Eric, she said one last time. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she whispered. I closed my eyes for a second. I know, I said. Then I walked out. The air outside felt colder than it should have for that time of year. Or maybe it was just me. I stepped off the porch, heading toward my car. And for a brief second, my eyes drifted to the house next door. Ryan's place. His truck was gone. Of course it was. I let out a quiet breath, then kept walking. As I got into my car and started the engine, I realized something that I hadn't fully let sink in until that moment. Nothing about my life was the same anymore. Not my home, not my marriage, not the person I trusted more than anyone. And as I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't know where I was going exactly, but I knew I wasn't going back to who I was before I opened that bedroom door. And maybe that was the only real truth left. Everything else, I'd have to figure out from here.